All right. I actually saw this maybe a day or two ago. It's Ben Shapiro talking about Destiny. Wow, Destiny is so relevant. What a nice guy. What a cool guy. It's Ben Shapiro talking about Destiny, and I haven't seen Destiny respond to it, which I'm a little surprised about, which leads me to believe that a conversation is getting worked up behind the scenes. I remember a while ago, I don't remember specifically. Oh, Lex Friedman tried to set up a conversation, a talk between Destiny and Ben Shapiro. That clearly fell through. But now that Ben is talking about Destiny, and I don't see Destiny talking about him back, because I imagine this would have been main channel content, unless I'm just wrong. This makes me feel like there's a conversation in the works. You know, and I could be wrong, but please, I hope so, because then I get to react to it. And that's the most beautiful thing, is when people make content for me to make content. Let's get this party started.
Joining us online is Trent Horn. He's an apologist for Catholic Answers, the host of the Council of Trent podcast and the author of 9 books, including Persuasive Pro-Life and Answering Atheism. He was recently on the Whatever podcast.
Oh, yeah, and it's about the Whatever podcast thing with Destiny. I don't know if, I think this guy actually might have talked to Destiny on there. I didn't see that one. About abortion. I'm assuming. Oh yeah, he did talk to this guy about it. I didn't watch it.
We are live.
I'm assuming. Yeah, okay. I thought for a second it was going to be about a different one, but here you go. This is what it's about. I already know Destiny's stance, so I don't feel like I need to watch the entire 3-hour long abortion debate. I'm tired of watching abortion debates. I'll be honest with you. All right. So
that's where he took part in a very long conversation and debate on abortion. Trent, thanks so much for joining the show.
Yeah, no problem, bro.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Damn, you couldn't get a better mic, brother?
So let's talk about the sort of
9 books, and that's the quality of your microphone?
Tactics that you use when you're debating the abortion issue on places like the Whatever podcast. How do you prepare for that sort of thing?
Well, when I'm engaged in a debate or dialogue with someone else, I make sure to watch their previous debates, see what they believe about abortion.
Okay, makes
So when
sense.
I was engaging Destiny on this question, I watched his previous debates, and I saw that he doesn't use the standard weak arguments pro-choice people use, like what about women who are too poor, or what about back alley abortions?
He uses the central point, and I agree with this, is that like if it is a human life, then none of those arguments matter, right? But since it's not, it doesn't have human personhood assigned to it. That's where you focus on. You focus on the personhood argument. Though you could make a strong argument for human suffering under those circumstances, since we all do it, right? You see that homeless guy, and you're like, I'm not going to give him any money. You make a justifiable reason. It's like, I want McDonald's today. No, I'm just kidding. No, but like that's the best way to operate when it comes to it. It's like, okay, if we don't assign personhood to the fetus, then we can get it aborted for whatever reason. And then you could talk about like some of the reasons why you might need to do that, like in terms of like rape or incest or anything like that. That makes perfect sense. So yeah.
He doesn't even think bodily rights arguments work well. It's my body, my choice. He thinks those arguments are terrible.
Those are all secondary arguments.
He believes that a person begins to exist 20 weeks after conception when you're conscious. But as I pointed out in the debate, there are many non-human animals that are that are more conscious than human newborns. So why don't we give them a right to life?
Well, because they're not humans and they have no capacity to become human. I think it's just it hasn't hit the point of person. I don't think it's just a consciousness argument, because I've seen debates. I'm pretty sure it's like a personhood argument, and consciousness is like a part of it that would determine personhood, I suppose. And he talks about some like level of what kind of consciousness, a little beyond me. I think that we all understand to an extent, like, and this might be lazy, but intuitively, like a fetus isn't a baby at all. We know that like if we were faced with saving a fetus in a test tube versus saving a born baby, we know that the born baby has more value and is an actual person. We don't like even pro lifers, like they understand that it's not the same. That's why they are
Super Boppio official super chatted $2. Benjamin Shakespeare versus Breast in a debate when?
I don't know. But even pro-lifers know that it's not the same, because if they actually thought that humans were being murdered, they would do a lot more than just stand outside of Planned Parenthood harassing people. Maybe they'd actually enact some kind of systemic change that gives people the ability to raise their kids and more easily and effectively or something. That seems like it might make a little bit more sense. But it's really, I don't think it's really about that. I don't really think that's I don't think that I believe conservatives like think it's sad, but they don't think it's a human life, right? Because if they did and they actually thought it was some kind of a genocide, more would be done about it. But it's met with complete complacency. So it's obviously like, I think that there's an understanding that it's a bit exaggerated.
So Destiny's position ultimately collapses because it can't explain the unique value that only human beings have. And whenever I try to have...
What do you mean? I mentioned that God does that already for us. God tells us that the animals exist for us to eat. What do you mean?
Abortion discussions, I always get back to that one question. What are the unborn? And if they're human beings, why don't we treat them humanely?
Well, they're not human beings because they don't have personhood. And that's what I imagine that was what the debate centralized around.
Yeah, I mean, the consciousness argument I've always found to be somewhat bizarre because, again, consciousness is actually a continuum. I mean, you see this among fully grown human beings. I mean, there are certain human beings who are capable of higher levels of thought than other human beings. And you get into eugenic territory pretty quickly if you decide to draw an arbitrary line.
No, not really. I mean, check this out. They were born, so it's easy. They are a human being that was born. A fetus is a part of the human life cycle that hasn't gotten personhood yet. It's not. It's just a thing. You don't like. That's really what it boils down to.
At certain mental function. I mean, obviously, there are people who have genetic preconditions that makes their IQ significantly lower than the average. Why should we draw the level of humanity? I mean, if we use sort of ancient philosophy and suggest that reason is the thing that separates man from the beast, then what about people who are not capable of reason? What about people who are mentally ill? What about people who have, as I say, genetic conditions? And why not eliminate all those people and deny them a right to life? I mean, at least I will say that Peter Singer at least takes it to its logical conclusion. He says that, even the level of consciousness of a 2-year-old is less than that of animals. So basically, until the kid's 3 and smarter than a
kid. But that kid was born. Check that out. You know what I mean? That's like a big part of the argument. I mean, I didn't watch the debate, but I guarantee it was more than just a consciousness argument. I guarantee that it was a big part of it was consciousness, but also part of it is being born. I really want to see Ben debate Destiny on this. That would be really fun. That would be a fun debate to react to.
Cow. Then at that point you can't kill them, but until they're 2, you probably could.
That's right. And in fact, in the discussion with Destiny, he even admitted that when I showed weaknesses in his argument, he said, well, at worst, that's just going to push my position towards infanticide. I'm not going to accept the humanity of early embryos. But I think for many normal human beings...
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I'm not going to accept humanity or humanhood, personhood assigned to embryos because I wouldn't either. It's not a fucking person. It's like a bean. It really is just not even close to the same. Even if you think it has person, it's not even close to the same as like us in any capacity.
They have
Bruce
a very
Rivers'
strong
take
moral
on Kai
intuition that it's
no
wrong
way.
to kill newborn babies. So if your view on abortion leads to the morality of
but it's not a newborn baby, so
killing newborn babies, then most people will see, yeah, your view on abortion is just simply wrong. Now, I think someone like Destiny might say to your reply, which I think is a good one. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you continue.
Right.
That's fine.
Oh, sure. Well, I was going to say that the reply might be that, yes, consciousness varies in different degrees, but you could still have the property of being conscious or not being conscious. Just like how someone on a football team, there might be some better players or worse players. You're either on the team or not on the team.
Yeah, but you were
Which
born.
is why I brought up to Destiny. Well, what if we had a healthy
In this case, you'd be on the team if you were like born, right? That would be the argument there. Oh, fuck.
Conscious fetus, and we cause them to be permanently unconscious? Could we use them, for example, to do organ harvesting and just grow a brain-injured human being? Or
no, because they were born. Once they get born,
do even worse things. Okay. I don't even want to say here on the show that he admitted you could do, which just ultimately shows the inhumanity of his position.
Listen, I'm skeptical of like the humanity arguments for pro-life because again, and you can get upset with this if you want, but like it's not really pro-life, right? It's pro-birth. Like in order to be pro-life, you would have to be like fundamentally. The conservative platform doesn't advocate for an bolstering of the middle class. They don't advocate for better health care. They don't advocate for more money for Head Start programs or for better schooling. They don't advocate for fixing like the adoption process. They don't advocate for anything that would require money to be invested and taking money away from rich people or redistributing that wealth. It's not really about pro-life. It's about feeling better about myself. That really is what it boils down to. And I'm sorry, but that's what it boils down to. It's not about life. It's about like, how do I feel about this thing? It's completely like, it makes me sad when we do abortions, but it doesn't make me sad when kids or single mothers can't afford anything or people can't afford healthcare. It's pro-birth. It's not a inhumane like situation. It's just That's really what it boils down to. So I just think it shouldn't be pro-life. It should be pro-birth. Like it's not a pro-life like situation or stance. Okay? Until conservatives come up with their own healthcare protocol to try to get fucking insulin down from hundreds of dollars a fucking vial or whatever, even though it costs like pennies on the dollar to make, we're not going to really, there's no real argument at all.
Yeah, I mean, aside from that, if somebody is in a coma and that coma is temporary, the person is unconscious.
Right, they're born. They were born. That's another part of the parameter. But okay.
I mean, every time you go in for surgery, they put you into a state of unconsciousness in order for them to do the surgery. In that state, born, when you're unconscious, presumably the answer is that you could be killed.
Yeah, you're in a lowered state of development. Not having like that consciousness is part of that stage of development, and you weren't born yet. There's multiple factors to this. It's not just one thing. So, like, yeah, it's a bunch of different factors.
And if the idea is that, well, that's time bound, well, so is human brain development, right? The whole idea there is that if you are unconscious and somebody drugs you so that you're in a coma, and that or so that you're unconscious while they do the surgery, and then you come out of the surgery, and the argument is you can't kill the person while they're unconscious because they will eventually become conscious again.
No, that's not the argument. The argument is that they were born.
Well, that is literally...
The argument is that they have personhood already. You can't take that personhood away. Like, that's really what it comes down to. Like, there has been no personhood assigned to a fetus, which isn't even, like, at the level of development to have anything at all, versus somebody who was put to sleep to fucking have their wisdom teeth pulled. Like, we know it's different. We know it's different.
All pregnancy ever is a thing that is not conscious, gaining consciousness as time goes on.
A thing that has never been conscious, getting to the point of developing that consciousness. And I believe Destiny's take is that once it gets that consciousness, then we can start assigning personhood to it. So it's an argument that doesn't sustain even sort of the most basic scrutiny. But honestly, most arguments on abortion really come down to the idea that they just kind of want abortion to be legal, and yes, because they want that, there's no way to draw any sort of consistent line at all. There is, but okay.
That, for example, prohibits the killing of infants or prohibits the killing of the mentally, quote, unfit, as they would have called them in the early 20th century.
Right. As I said to Destiny, we were talking about, I think the host Brian asked, what do you think is the worst pro-choice argument? And I said the worst one, which is probably the most common, is that abortion ought to be legal because abortion helps born people. I mean, that's essentially it, right? What about someone who's too poor to take care of a child, someone who's too young? Abortion needs, it helps born people, so it ought to be legal. And of course, the weakness in this argument is that it just ignores what...
I've never heard somebody... I guess some people make that argument kind of when they say, like, oh, somebody can't afford it. I can understand that as a reason to get an abortion after we've determined that it's fine to have, like, it's legal, but...
Whatever the unborn are, we need to answer that question. If the unborn are not human beings, then I agree, abortion is not a big deal. But if the unborn
they're not.
Are human beings, abortion simply can't be justified.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how you protect your asset base.
Yeah, I protect it by skipping through Ben Shapiro's ads for different gold coins, Birch Gold Group. So, if you guys want to check it out.
He ate, sleep, console, out of his sleep, and he was breathing shit. Preference, need free arguments. Let's on over to helixsleep.com/bet with Helix. Better sleep starts right now. So let's talk for a second about some of the follow-up arguments. So, you have the arguments about levels of consciousness that you've mentioned, and then you have the arguments that Destiny didn't actually engage in about bodily autonomy. Now, the most famous argument along these lines is the comatose violinist argument, the argument that somebody hooks you up bodily to a comatose violinist, and that are you forced to essentially carry this person around with you?
Well, no, but
for 9 months or not. How do you respond to those sorts of arguments?
Okay.
Well, what I point out is the violinist thought experiment. It puts us in the position of the pregnant mother. But what if we change the thought experiment to put you in the position of the violinist? What if somebody...
people are talking about their position on the death, like putting people to death. I think that there's a difference between getting an abortion versus getting killed for death. Like, I understand how you can be pro-life or pro-birth while also being... for capital punishment, but you can do that because the person who gets capital punishment, the argument is that they deserve it because they did a horrible thing and usually rob somebody else of their life. And so the idea is that, like, they're, a silly goose that shouldn't exist anymore, right? So,
hung out with a group of the Society of Musical Pranksters, and they know that sometimes they'll go out, have a night of fun and antics, and they'll wake up hooked up to an unconscious person. And what if that person found out they were hooked up to you?
What the
and
fuck
they
is
said,
this
you know
argument?
what, I don't want, and you needed that person's kidneys to live. And they said, you know what, I don't want to take care of this guy, unplug him from me, kill him.
Well, I mean, you could just get dialysis though. But I mean, I don't, you know, this is an interesting argument.
You see, wait a minute, you caused me to be dependent on you.
Oh,
so you
okay.
owe me, you have a moral obligation to help me. But it gets even worse than that because this analogy is so far removed from pregnancy. An unborn child is not like a dying violinist who we choose to not save. When you unplug from the violinist, you don't start the fatal sequence of events that leads to the end of his life. You're choosing not to save his life. But in abortion, it's not the case. You have a healthy child, and you initiate the fatal sequence of events by choosing to abort him or her.
Well, wouldn't you be initiating the fatal sequence of events of the other case because you're taking the other person off of your support? Like, I mean, I mean, I don't care for this argument in general, but it's actually kind of makes sense now that you're engaging with it. But okay, I guess I'm wrong. I don't know.
And then finally,
really
my
enough,
kidneys were not made for anybody else. If I donate to someone, that's extraordinary. That's
yeah, right. But your whole body as a woman would be made for the baby. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not like in on this argument. I just like it makes more sense now that I'm hearing it a little bit. I mean, I just don't really care about it. But
a heroic act.
AVMU
but the
super
uterus
chatted $1.99. Papa Gut streams heart.
hey, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I do.
is designed for the unborn child, so the child, if he has any rights at all, has at least a right to the natural place he would live to receive food and sustenance.
So that means that as long as the person that's hooked up is a girl, it's okay to engage in this. Ah, I understand the argument now. Women should
One
be...
further argument on that front that I've used as well is the fact that when that argument assumes no relationship whatsoever between the two people at issue. If the dying violinist were your brother, presumably the math changes pretty quickly. And if the dying violinist were your child...
Yeah, but the brother still wouldn't be obligated, so...
which is what we are actually talking about right here, then the math changes fairly dramatically. And anybody who is like, oh, my kid was hit by a car and might be dying, can I unplug it from me? I mean, I think at that point everybody goes, whoa.
I mean, they might want to if they're going to be beyond, like, repair or something, and they're going to have no quality of life. Like, I could see that being a thing, too, you know?
Want to kill your own kid? Like, that's a little bit awkward. It's
right. Just awkward.
Most of these arguments are incredibly awkward, actually.
Right. They don't correspond to what pregnancy actually is. And so even in that case, you're right. Some people will tell me, yeah.
That's interesting. The vast majority of abortions take place so early on that there's no way that you'd even be able to know if it would be a perfectly healthy fetus. That's true. That's a bit of sensationalized language from the pro-choicers. But then they would argue, like, oh, it doesn't matter if they're perfectly healthy. You're getting into a eugenics conversation if you want to abort unhealthy fetuses, which gets into a whole new debate because I think it's like in Sweden, they actually do abort if they know they have Down syndrome. The kid will have Down syndrome. They abort that kid, which is that's a whole conversation in and of itself, though.
The violinist argument, it doesn't work in normal cases of pregnancy where you do something knowing a person could get plugged into you, but maybe it works in the case of rape. But imagine a woman is kidnapped by a rapist and she escapes and she's 9 months pregnant and, you know, she's in a rural area trying to get away from him and she gives birth to this child that was conceived by the rapist. Now, she never chose to engage in intercourse, but this is still her child, and the child is completely dependent upon her.
Yeah, I think you should be able to abort the kid. I think that, like, most people live in, like, the real world where they understand that life is really fucked up, and, like, I wouldn't force a woman to, you know, if she somehow had to have the kid, obviously, like, in a scenario where she was only, like, the problem with this scenario is it's, like, it's not until the woman is, like, already had birth that she had the opportunity to get rid of it. In that case, like, yeah, put the kid in, like, foster care, but she shouldn't have to raise it. But, like, in a normal circumstance, like, oh, a woman was assaulted.
Zed King super chatted $5.
They should be able to get abortion.
Just supporting my local business. PP poo poo supremacy.
Thank you. I appreciate your support. Hey, thank you so much for the 7 months, Sam. 7 months. I can still abort you. In some states, I think only if there's a risk to your life, though, which there might be for watching Papa Gut streams. Because you're probably doing something more productive. But you know what? I prefer that you're here. We're all here to be friends, guys.
She could not leave that child or just abandon that child.
Yes, she could. She could leave it in, like, a fire department or something, or leave it in a foster system.
It would be a difficult situation. But our children have a right to our care, even if we don't consent to bringing them into existence.
I don't agree with that, obviously. I mean, if you were sexually assaulted, like, you know, it's just, I mean, the
Lights became a member.
Hey, thank you so much for the membership, Northern Lights. Or is that how you say it? I think so. That's just like that's like such a one-off, complicated scenario. But I think that you should be able to, like, I mean, I would well, first of all, you can put your kid up for adoption regardless. But I would understand why somebody that was assaulted would not want to keep that baby. That would be a constant reminder, and that could make that person like very seriously suicidal, which is a horrific thing for somebody to have to go through.
We're speaking with Trent Horn. He's an apologist for
I already knew that.
Catholic Answers and the host of the Council of Trent podcast. So you did get
I like this Trent guy, though. I do like him.
Into a sort of fascinating conversation with Destiny about the source of morality. And this is really what all this comes down to, is that if you don't believe that there is such a thing as an objective morality, you're likely to be able to spin off into whatever self-directed
I think that, okay,
morality you choose.
The problem, okay, so I understand what they mean by objective morality. What they're, my understanding, I'm just going to look it up real quick, because I'm pretty sure they're just talking about, like, the Bible gives you objective morality. The problem with this is that, like, theoretically, there is no objective morality, right? Different societies can have different takes on morality. I think that our society has come up with, so far, the best take on morality, right? And a lot of it centralizes around, like, the golden rule. But the thing is that, like, objective morality doesn't exist, and we understand that because, like, for the most part, like, okay, I understand the point of this is to centralize and saying, look, religion proposes an objective morality on the way that the world should work. The problem is, and you can, I don't care if you're upset, I mean, I don't care if that you're tired of me saying it, religion condones slavery. And so when you have a religion that condones slavery, you can't point to that and say objective morality. You just can't. And the next argument's like, no, you don't understand the context. That, like, Ben's, I know what Ben's argument here for the argument is for. Jeez, I have to talk better. I know what Ben's argument is for the Bible condoning slavery. And it is that, like, God gave us information in a way he thought that we would be able to understand it based on where we were developmentally as a society. If that's the case, though, why can't you justify making it so that being gay isn't a sin? Right? So there's too many, but he wouldn't agree with that. Even though you could easily interpret that one verse is not, it's not don't sleep with another man as you sleep with a woman. It's actually, my understanding is supposed to say don't sleep with a child like you would with a woman. So it's against pedophilia, not homosexuality. The Bible doesn't give us an objective morality. The Bible puts us in a situation where it tells us if you listen to what the Bible says, and more than that, what the priest says that's reading it to you, because historically people couldn't read and couldn't even interpret the Bible. So it put people in a massive power dynamic scenario. But if you listen to what God says, you will have eternal bliss. If you don't, you're going to go to hell and you're going to be damned for eternity. There's no actual morality being created there. There's no understanding. There's no level of empathy that's being encouraged there. It's just like, do as I say or I will hurt you, and I will help you. Right? I will do as I say or I will hurt you. But if you do what I say, I will help you. It doesn't instill a level of morality or empathy of understanding, like, oh, imagine this was you. And, like, that's why we understand, like, that's how we should centralize our moral framing. Would you want this to happen if it was you? Look at every single law. That's why you wouldn't want people to steal from you, hit you, murder you, destroy your property. You wouldn't want people to enact any type of this sort of violence onto you in some capacity. And that's really where the laws come from more than anything else. But again, the Bible condones slavery.
AVMU super chatted $4.99. So, I don't get why conservatives can't see why rape victims don't want the kid. Like, what the F? They didn't a kid. Person shrugging. It's that simple.
I agree.
And that makes things very convenient for you. What do you think lies at sort of the fundamental level of the argument about the source of morality?
Yeah, well, I think that for many people who don't want to make morality objective, they might want to make it social. Destiny had a non-cognitivist position that morality is just an expression of disapproval. So if you say murder is wrong, that is literally the same thing as saying boo murder. I don't like murder. But
I mean, I guess that's kind of true. I just wouldn't phrase it like that. I would. It's an interesting way for. Is that how he phrased it? It's interesting.
Most of us, when we talk about these moral issues, we're not just debating opinions. We understand that these are moral facts that we're talking about here. And so it doesn't work when we're trying to.
Well, we created that moral fact, though. It's like morality is a social construct. We understand that, right? Like, I think it's a morally good thing to have, like, healthcare provided for people. You might disagree, and that's fine, but that's like an example of morality being subjective, right? That would be an example of that.
To establish what.
Papa, I agree. I second your views. Even as a Christian myself, I heavily challenge the practice of the Bible. I feel like it forces an unhealthy ultimatum. Yeah, that's the thing too. Is I think that you can love and you can love God, and you can believe in God without believing the Bible on everything that it says. Because like we know that like there are bad people, and you guarantee that those bad people, or some of those bad people, are in the church. And they most likely changed what God's word was to fit their narrative. That's not unrealistic to think. I mean, there's how many different interpretations of the Bible are there? It's not unrealistic to think we have all these different interpretations. Who's to say that somebody didn't weaponize them in some capacity? It makes perfect sense.
What should moral standards be for society? So if you try to root morality in social opinions, you get a lot of problems. For example, I would tell Destiny and other pro-choice people, if society eventually changed and said that abortion is immoral, would you agree with society? I think many of them would say, no, society's gone wrong. We have to get it back for women's rights.
Well, yeah, of course. But like, how does that disprove what Destiny said? Like, I feel like there's a possible misrepresentation here. I think he's saying Destiny said our society says this. What? I don't know. I'd have to watch the full debate. I don't think that Destiny would be stumped by that argument. We're having conversations every day about what is and isn't moral in our society and trying to like change those things. But okay.
Oh, okay. So you don't think that morality really comes from society because you want to reform and change society to make it in accord with your understanding of morality.
Yeah, but it would be society who changes society to make that change, right? So
all of that shows that morality can't come merely from society. We have to have a moral standard that transcends time, place, and culture.
Which is they're going to
now,
say
as
religion.
A Christian, I think the best explanation for that is there is a perfectly moral person, the source of goodness itself, God, who transcends time, place, and culture, and that's where.
Yeah, I mean, again, maybe that might be true, but God's words, if that is true, God's word has not been communicated particularly well by people. So
moral standards come from.
Well, again, go check out the work of Trent Horn. You can hear he's really, really good at this. His book is Persuasive Pro-Life.
He's okay. I feel like some of them are misinterpretations of what Destiny actually said. And I could be wrong, but I watched too much Destiny, so like that's the problem. But
We've had a talk about our culture's toughest issue. It's available over at Amazon. Thanks so much for your time, Trent. Really appreciate it. Are you tired of the lies and the
anyway, yeah, I am tired of your lies, man. Anyway, let's honestly hope that this turns into a debate with Ben Shapiro and Destiny, because that would be fantastic. But I'm not sure if it'll actually happen.